Molweni mawethu masibhodise kuninonke kwindawo ngendawo nibukeleni kuzo. Welcome to this week's episode of your show Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right to simphakela yona ngqo apha ku SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Si broadcaster ke ku SABC 1 in our Auckland Park studios. Igama lami ke ngusiphiwo Nzawundi. Khumbuke nani ke mawethu kuba sanika ithuba lokuba nithabathe inxaxheba kwinqoko yethu. Namhlanje ngosela umnxeba phaya ku 011 7146919 or 6918. You can also send us your emails to consume@sabc.co.za. Alternatively, find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Like a virus, misleading or overstated advertising continues to prey on vulnerable South African consumers. This despite laws prohibiting false marketing methods by suppliers of goods and services. But though consumers and consumer rights bodies are fighting back to liberate consumers, and one of the latest victories has seen the withdrawal of advertisements of a slimming product promising a quick fix to Weight Watchers. Just take a look at this insert.
Kudla lokudlile namuhla lokufana ne-fruit salad, i-cereal kanye ne-yogurt. Ngabe uyati yini ukuthi ngikombamba lobo ucabanga ukuthi uyakudla?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that this is 100% yogurt. I'm not in the food industry. I'll just have to follow my gut and hope that what they sell us is actually what it is.
Yes, I am 100% sure that this is chicken because I grew up in the Eastern Cape and there are chickens.
We can never be sure exactly what we're eating. I guess it's probably a matter of trust. You kind of trust a brand or you trust a group or even a restaurant.
Ithemba nje lokuthi ebushari ngeke bangitshela manga ukuthi ngidla inyama yenkomo and on the other hand bona bangidlisa inyama yedonki.
Phela leminye imbhalo emkhicitweni yekudla noma imikhangiso tholakale ukuthi ithembisa lokungedulu kunaloko lokuliciniso. Lokhu sekwende bathengi ukuthi bafunze noma babukele ngeliso lelikhaliphile. Imibiko yenyama yenkomo lekwatholakala ukuthi icutshwe nenyama levele etindzaweni letingakholwakali isasemisha emicondweni yabathengi. Timo letingekho emthethweni letifana naleti lesetende ukuthi tinhlangano letimele emalungelo ebathengi tilwe kude lembhalo noma imikhangiso isuswe. Leminye ke yale mibango ilethwa e-Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa. Silwane Khosi wathi kabanti ngaleminye yayo.
There's a lot of products out there in the market where you go to a shelf and you find that it says 100% juice. And according to our investigations with the help of the Department of Agriculture, it might be, so if it says 100% orange juice, then it's misleading because you cannot have 100% orange juice or mango juice. They usually dilute it with other fruit juices. We had a labeling issue where they said alcohol free, and this Muslim person came back and said no, but it's not alcohol free, it has 0.05% alcohol. Went to the Department of Agriculture, said yes, they are allowed to say it's alcohol free if it has a certain percentage of if it's below a certain percentage in alcohol content. So your alcohol free beer, chances are that it's not 100% alcohol free. If you see a packaging that says fat-free milk and you look at the back, you'll see that it has 2% fat in it, although it says fat-free. So according to the Department of Agriculture, it is acceptable if any product contains less than 2% fat, then it can be termed fat-free.
Ngabe uyati yini ukuthi imbhalo emikhicitweni yekudla imelene? Lemininingwane kuleli thebula yeslide sinye sesinkwa. Uma udla timbili tilayi kumele wengete kabili lelinani lekuleli thebula kude wati ukuthi udle kangakanani. Uma ngabe umbhalo ekudleni lokuthide uthi linani le-sodium lincane, kepha ubuka lithebula lema-ingredients lasetshenzisiwe kwakha loyo mkhicito, uthole ukuthi i-sodium ilapha etulu. Lokho kusho ukuthi i-sodium ngilenye yema-ingredients lenelinani lelisetulu kuloyo mkhicito. Umthetho uthi uma kubhalwa ama-ingredients lasekudleni kucalwa ngalawo lanelinani lelisetulu kwehle kuze kufike enanini leliphansi.
The wonderful thing about BioSlim once a day is you take the tablets in the morning and you just forget about it for the rest of the day. You don't have to count calories, you don't have to watch every little thing that you eat.
Imibhalo lesemikhicitweni yekudla akusiyo yodwa lekukhalwa ngayo. Imikhangiso yemikhicito yekunciphisa umtimba nayo kutholakala ukuthi ithembisa lokhu lokungetulu kweliciniso. Umthengi wakhala ngemkhangiso weBioSlim nga-2005. Sikhalo sakhe bekuwukuthi noma ngabe lo mkhangiso ucukethe amagama lacwayisa umthengi ukuthi iBioSlim lena ihambisana nekudla lokunempilo, kepha lamagama avela isikhathi lesifishane kakhulu kumabonakude kuthi angafundzeka. I-Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa yavumelana naye lo mthengi.
Uma ngumzali akulula ukuthola isikhathi sokusilima. Ukhetha okulula kunokunempilo. Usibonisa ukukhuluphala namafutha anda. Ngizame yonke into okuncipha, kodwa ekugcineni konke akusebenzanga. Ngaze ngathola iHebex Attack.
Kuleli viki leliphelile, ikomiti ye-Advertising Standards Authority icithe ticelo letintsatfu tenkampani iHebex letiphikisana netincumo talenhlangano mayelana nemikhicito lemithathu yalenkampani. Leli komiti lincume ukuthi imikhangiso lemithathu yalenkampani ithembisa lokungetulu kwaloko lokuliciniso. Lesincumo sisho kwekuthi lenkampani kumele yesule tethembiso temikhicito yayo letingetulu kwaloko lokuliciniso.
It's a big problem, this promising people depending on what they believe in. Even today, I get a pamphlet that says, that makes a lot of promises about enlarging certain parts of the body, a return of lost lover. This one, stop a cheating lover, break up spells. If you have relationship problems, it's witchcraft.
I-Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa kanye naletinye inhlangano litimele emalungelo ebathengi tiyakunxusa mbukeli ukuthi utivikele ngekufundza uphindze uvisise kahle imbhalo emkhicitweni yekudla. Zinhle Dlamini, Yilungelo Lakho.
Sibulele ngelonqako siliphathelwe by our producer uZinhle Dlamini. Ukuncokola banzi ke ngentengiso ne-labels ezilahlekisayo kwizinto ezithengiswayo. Masamkele iintwendo zethu zanamhlanje. Masamkele uThami Bolani yena ovela phaya kwi-National Consumer Academy. Sibe nogqirha Harry Steinman yena ongugqirha olwela amalungelo abathengi. We'll also welcome Fred Makhato from the Advertising Standards Authority. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me and welcome to the show. Now, ngifuna ukuthi siqale kuma-basics, just watching that insert, it moved me in a way as a consumer. Masikhuluma nge-false advertising. What are we talking about, Bhutan?
Okokuqala sikhuluma ngento which is illegal.
Okay.
In terms of the Consumer Protection Act. Ayikho emthethweni, kusho ukuthi abantu aba-involve kwi-misleading advertisements baphula umthetho. Number two, labo bantu abenza false advertising, misleading advertising, baphula umthetho wethu njengabathengi because basideny thina as consumers the right to choose. Because if you give me false information, kusho ukuthi I won't be able to exercise my right to choose. Any point which is very important, ukuthi uma wenza misleading advertisement, kusho ukuthi misrepresent information ama facts about the product which thina njengama consumers must buy. And therefore, we told the consumer then makes a wrong decision basically information
Based on that
which
information.
is illegal. Yeah.
But do you think advertisers do it deliberately to mislead a consumer?
Well, the answer will be yes and no.
Okay.
Sometimes business people, they don't understand the act, so they do these things because, abana information, they're not knowledgeable, they're not being properly advised. Abanye, they deliberately break the law in the hope that consumers won't be able to pick it up and then report to the Consumer Commission or report it to the Advertising Standards Authority.
Well, talking about the Advertising Standards Authority, Fred, thank you very much for joining us also. But Kakuskalelo, what is the code of advertising practice?
The Code of Advertising Practice is a document that the advertising industry put together to regulate the conduct of advertisers, to benefit the industry as well as to protect the consumers. So in terms of the process that we have, is that if a consumer is being misled, as Otami say, then they have a right to approach the ASA and lodge a complaint with the ASA.
Lodge a complaint with the SA. Now, talking about lodging a complaint, how does a consumer lodge a complaint?
There are ways. One could be by an email or by fax or by post. But the complaint must be in writing.
But what's the procedure that's most likely to follow?
The procedure that is likely to happen is that once we receive a complaint from a consumer must state in the complaint what their complaint is and about what and where did they see the ad. Either it could be on TV or they had it on radio or it's on print or now we have the SMSs. So they must indicate the venue so that it will be easy for us when we file the complaint to the advertiser to indicate where the consumer actually saw the ad. So that we should be able to source the ad and see what the ad actually says.
So are you basically saying that as a consumer, when I'm watching TV or I'm listening to radio, if I go to buy that product and I find that it's not delivering up to its promises, I have the right to complain to your association?
It's your right, hence the advertising industry established the ASA. The sole purpose there is to ensure that the advertising industry remains intact. Because if you have advertisers who mislead the public or the consumers, the likelihood of consumers believing what advertisers say will diminish.
So what is the advertiser required to do if then the advertisement is found to be contravening with the Code of Advertising practice?
Just before we deal with that issue, once the advertiser receives the complaint from us, then the advertiser has a right to reply to the complaint. Either they can explain what actually happened, whether they believe if the consumer is right or not, and if they believe that the consumer is right or they made a mistake, because at times you can have an opinion from somebody, but you find that as consumers who have different views. Now, if they believe that there's a chance that a consumer could have been misled, they can withdraw their advert. But if they persist with their views, then it's for us to determine whether the advertising claim is valid or not. If we rule that the claim is not valid, then the advertiser will have to withdraw or amend that claim.
Wow, quite interesting. Well, that is Freddy Mukhato, who is coming from the Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa. Unfortunately, with second insert, just to continue. After the break, we're going to talk to Dr. Harry Steinman, specifically about the Herbex advertisements that was pulled off air. Sikwamukela kokhona ke mbukeli ukhumbule kuba nawe ungavakalisa ingxoxo or uvakalise imbono zakho phaya 011 7146918 or 6919 and also send us an email to sabc.co consumer@sabc.co.za or rather. Unfortunately, Freddie had to leave us and joining me in studio right now is still Otami Bolani. But right now we're going to cross over to our Cape Town studio and speak to Dr. Steinman. Dr. Steinman, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Good afternoon to everyone.
All right. Let's just talk about the product that the slimming solution that you complained about. That is the control. They've got the appetite control tablets, the booster eat less tablets, and then the attack fat syrup. What concerns did you have about the advertisement?
Well, I think we have to start right in the beginning, and that is the principle that there is a great deal of products being advertised, making claims that are invalid. I'm talking about specifically therapeutic products, specifically complementary medicines, and specifically in that group, the weight loss products. We know that Big Pharma has spent millions, if not billions, trying to find a solution to weight loss, and they've been completely unsuccessful. And into this is now a group of individuals who claim to have found the magic cure or the magic treatment, of which Herbix was one of these. And Herbix has been operating for a few years in the market. But the background is that the ASA previously, if we look back 10, 12 years ago when Herbix first started around then, the ASA had a principle that if the advertiser was asked to prove that his product worked, all he had to do was to find an expert that claims that it is valid, and they would rule in that person's favor in spite of the evidence contrary to it. I've been laying complaints against Herbix products for a number of years with the advertising standards, and each time they ruled against me because they had a particular doctor who claimed that the product works, even though the product had never been tested or evaluated in animals or in humans, but was loosely made up of a batch of ingredients which individually have not been shown to have any effect on weight loss. What changed now is that precedent had moved on. The ASA has had a number of rulings over the number of years where they are able to look at what an expert says. And what happened here was that I'd been given evidence that the expert for Herbix had never completed his training as a homeopath and had never written exams, and I was able to argue that the expert was no longer an expert, and therefore the ASA couldn't take what he was saying at face value. Based on that, they were able to then look at the argument, and the argument was simply this, that firstly, Herbix, for Herbix product to claim it is effective in weight loss would be a miracle, because even Big Pharma can't find the solution. Secondly, if you look at the evidence of studies for the individual ingredients, you will see very clearly that none have been shown to be effective in weight loss. And then the third principle was that even if they were shown to be effective, that the dosage that Herbix was using was so small compared to studies that it was almost impossible for the product to have any effect. Let's look at it a different way. If we can prove that Panado or paracetamol is good for headaches, it's one thing. But if you're going to sell it at 1/100th of the dose, then how can you claim it's also effective for headaches? And that's the principle here.
All right.
The ASA ruled in my favor, but Herbix appealed the decision, and it moved up to the appeal committee and finally to the final appeal committee, which was chaired by Judge Kate O'Regan, and she made some very devastating conclusions, which also will help the ASA in how to determine and evaluate these products in the future.
All right, Dr. Steinman, what were some of the arguments raised by this product in support of the advertisement?
Herbix's argument was that this was a Western herbal. In other words, they were arguing that we cannot use Big Pharma or traditional scientific arguments to confirm whether this product works or not. In other words, if it's homeopathic, they were arguing you need homeopathic evidence. If it was Chinese medicine, they were arguing you needed Chinese medicine evidence to prove that the product works. And they claim that their experts were experts at herbal medicine or Western herbal medicine, and because the experts said it worked, therefore it must work.
All right.
Our contrary evidence, sorry.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Dr. Steinman. Let's just have a quick question with Butami joining us in studio. What do you think is motivating or leading into this misleading? Because this is a continuation of Jonganje. What do you think is leading to this misleading of consumers by advertisers?
Well, I think the answer is quite straightforward. People who are selling want to sell and make a profit. So if I give consumers wrong information, consumers are going to buy more. You see, that's where it's all about.
Do you think it feeds on the vulnerability of the consumer to find quick solutions?
Of course, because most of the time our consumers in South Africa are not well informed. And if you're not well informed, you can't take the right decision. That is where the problem is.
Being coming from your organization at Dilishana, definitely with what would you say, or how big is this problem basically? What are we looking at here?
Well, it's a huge problem. I mean, ngikhumbula ngisakhula kwakukhona lento skin lightening creams. Ukuthiwa uma usebenzisa this cream ubuso bakho buzoba mhlophe ube muhle and all those things. And it was not true. Uthola ukuthi abantu abaningi bagcina sebebe ne-skin cancer. Uthola ukuthi umuntu omhlophe la ebusweni from here neyengalo uthola ukuthi umuntu omnyama. So uthola ukuthi i-effect is just not the same. Because abantu babengazi uthola ukuthi bayathenga. Thatha i-case esi-investigator eCape Town, one of our members at Cape Town, i-halal food. This big supplier vele ithenga inyama normally bese benza ama-stickers bese befaka ukuthi no, this is halal food. So abantu abadla halal food bahambe bothenga thinking ukuthi this is halal food, whereas it was not halal food. Because into abeyijongile is to make money, you know.
Kodwa ke mina ke kucala njengomthengisi kuba ndithi the product is as I claim it is. How do you prove when from the consumers advocating side? How do you prove that it's not what I promised?
You know what happens? Just take, for instance, the issue of halal foods. We tell you what people, for instance, who work for this business, for this supply, will contact us and say, look, I work for this organization, I earn my living from them, but there's something wrong they're doing. This is what they're doing, so please go and investigate, but you don't mention me. That's how it happens.
You don't mention me. All right. Well, let's just quickly take another ad break. We'll continue with our discussion after the break. Remember that you can be part of our discussion by calling us in our studio line and also going to our social media platforms. After the break, we'll continue with this discussion. All right, welcome back. We're still talking about deceptive or false advertisements and labels on products promising far more than they can live up to. And the question is, what are your rights as a consumer? And to help us with that is my guest right here is Mr. Thami Bolani. And in our Cape Town studios, we're joined by Dr. Harris Steinman. Now, before the break, we're still talking about these, Mr. Bolani. I just want us to talk about the liability. Basically, how liable are we as the media, or as the media, is the media, in terms of misleading the consumer right at home?
I think as the National Consumer Forum or the National Consumer Forum Academy, we are quite positive towards the media. I think the media plays quite an important role in educating consumers and exposing some of these misleading advertisements that we see all over the country. So the role of the media is somewhat positive. So I'm not going to blame the media that much. I do wish that the media could do more in terms of educating your lower LSMs, consumers, because they are the ones who are the real victims of misleading advertisements. If we touch umuntu ofundile, all right, your higher LSM person who reads, who understands, who's got access to internet and so on, those people are able to take the right decisions. Whereas abantu abangafundile, who don't get information all the time, those are the people who become victims of misleading advertisements, and we told what you born who make these mistakes, buying the wrong products all the time. As an example, umyema pharmacy, you'll discover ukuthi yabona lama tablets and these things kuthiwa ama vitamins. Zithengwa kakhulu abantu abangaunderstand ukuthi zibasiza ngani. Because if udla ama-veg, udla properly, udla ama-fruits on a daily basis, uphuza amanzi and everything, there's no need to take those supplements. So uthola ukuthi ngokuzithatha, the only thing oyenzayo ukuthi umchamo wakho uba yellow or uba blue, or so uthola ukuthi it's a waste of money. So media needs to do more in terms of educating consumers.
Well, let's just hear from these consumers we're talking about. Sinaye phaya umfana futhi Dlamini who says Spar does that, displays a product on a much lower price at a shelf, and when you get to the till you pay even more. Malbongo Pelamanyonya says mna ndicela kubuza TV channels like the SABC and radio stations and newspapers ezisetyenziswayo to advertise the products, ingaba zona ziqinise kanjani ukuba lo product ikulo advert is the right product and it still does not mislead the consumer? I think it comes back to what I was asking
sure.
you. You know, basically how is there regulation when it comes to, before I post my advert, my ad on air, is there procedure or what is the rule of law basically when it comes to that?
You see, there are two things here. If, for instance, we write an article in a newspaper, that article finally be correct, it needs to contain the right information. But most of the time, advertisements are check. So, advert figure is ready and you simply place it, and nobody checks whether that advert is right or wrong. So it becomes a responsibility. Exactly. It becomes a responsibility of the consumer then to decide, you know, this is right, this is not wrong, this is wrong, and then take action. Wow. I mean, it's not my adverts, but you know.
Let's come to Dr. Steinman in Cape Town. Yes, I broke you there. You were still telling me basically about the process that you went through when you were applying for this advert to be removed on air and how it was misleading. Just continue and explain briefly to us what exactly went about in your application process.
Well, maybe this is a good point to actually talk about the process. If I'm aware, or the consumer's aware, that an advert is making a claim that doesn't sound plausible or sounds impossible, they, as Fred of the ASA said, you will write a letter to ASA and you will simply say, look, I've seen this advert on this station or in this magazine and it's making a claim for weight loss and it doesn't make any sense to me, and you explain why, and you will say, I'm sure it's at fault of clauses or regulations of the ASA, and they will then investigate. And as he says, they will send it to the advertiser for comment. Now, in this case, the advertiser said that they're experts, and they presented experts who said, this is evidence we are going to supply to say to you that this product works. What the Judge O'Regan said is that the evidence has to agree with what the expert says. So the experts were saying the product works, but when you read the evidence they supplied, the evidence actually said there's no evidence that the ingredient or the product works. The expert, the homeopath who said that one of the products works because of fenugreek, the evidence he supplied, if you read it very carefully, it said that fenugreek is in fact used for stimulating your appetite and not for decreasing your appetite. So there was a disconnect between what the expert was saying and what the studies or the science or the arguments are for that ingredient. And what the ASA is supposed to do is they're supposed to take the evidence from where it comes from. So if they're arguing that it's a Western herbal, then traditional text for Western herbals must support that argument as well. And that's where there was a problem, because the experts were not able to supply any evidence from traditional text to confirm that the ingredient has the effect that the experts were claiming.
All right, just making reference to the product you spoke about and that we also have on our insert. It was found after the ruling that basically the words attack the fact are unsubstantiated and misleading to the average consumer. What does this mean to you as an activist for consumer rights?
Well, I think it's a mixed blessing, because firstly, it said that the claims were invalid and the name was invalid, which means that they cannot use the name or the claims. But my experience over the last 12 years is that what a lot of these manufacturers do is they simply rename the product, or they simply, when the ASA does a blanket ban on their advertising, they then carry on selling it without advertising in the media. So if you go to Dis-Chem, you'll see a number of products being sold by Dis-Chem, making claims that are not valid, but all that's happened is that the ASA can stop the media from taking those adverts and placing them either in magazines or on television, but they can't ban the product, they can't stop the product from being sold. And as long as the company has an outlet for it, they can carry on selling that product even with those false claims.
Even with those false.
So it's a bittersweet victory.
Okay.
And the other aspect of it is that it doesn't ban all the other products from that company. It only bans the claims for the specific ones that have been ruled against.
All right, Dr. Steinman, just hold it right there. We've got a caller who's calling us from KZN. I believe he's on the line. Hello.
Hello baba kunjani?
Sikhona kunjani mhlekazi?
Ngiyaphila kakhulu ukhuluma noMolo Maseko eDumbe ezibombo ma.
Yes, Molo.
Nginombuzo lapha kwesinye seyitoro la kwelakithi eDumbe ngengathenga angeke ngisibize ngegama. Ngeke ngathenga lapha i-tin staff ngenxa ukuthi ngiyabuka ku-advertise-iwe ngathenga i-tin staff inkinga yamazange ibuke ukuthi expired date azange ibuke ngani mangisala ekhama ngichecka i-expire lento lena ngoba di-advertiser nje expire so manje kwawukuthi yena mase ngiyibuyisele emumva benqaba ukuyithatha manje angazi mhlawumbe ukuthi bengaluleka ethini lapho ihambeli zakho futhi
Bamba ke Molo uButami just wants to answer that question. Butami kakuthetha
No, kusho ukuthi unelungelo ukuthi ayibuyisele emuva lonto bamnikeze imali yakhe uma benqaba ukumsiza ngoba into ezenzeka kakhulukazi ezitolo zasemakhaya uyakwazi ukuthi ke ayireport kwi-Consumer Affairs Office wonke ama-provinces.
Kodwa ke emakhaya azikho offices the Consumer Rights
No,
Affairs.
zikhona.
Do they
Wonke
in
ama-provinces.
each and every province?
Each and every province.
Okay.
So angayisa kwi-Consumer Affairs Office. For instance, if ingaphosisa KZN, there are about 9 Consumer Affairs offices kwi-province. So
All right.
angakwazi ukuthi athole usizo khona.
Okay, but Molo ngiyathemba ubona uphendule. Did you take any steps?
ngiphendulekile mdaba bangibonge kakhulu uMolo Maseko eDumbe ngiyabonga mdaba.
All right, thank you so much, Molo. On that note, let's just quickly take another ad break. After the break, we continue with our discussion on these misleading adverts. We're coming live in our SABC studios in Auckland Park, and today we are discussing false advertisement. And to be part of our discussion, you can call us on 011-714-6918 or 6919. Before the break, we had Ubud Molo was calling us from KZN, and he says he bought this product, which is a fish, and when he got home, it had expired. When he went back, they wouldn't take back the money. How prevalent in these cases, Butan?
Well, kuma shops in the rural areas, these things happen every day. I think we're going to report to National Consumer Commission, which came out about a month ago, which confirms that land is very prevalent in rural areas shops, and even in shops lamakhulu. So into enzeka all the time, and lama shops lawa they take advantage ukuthi abantu bakule ndawo abafundanga. They don't read the information ekwikhona kwi-packaging. But go to any shop now, even here in town, and then look kuma shoppers how do they behave. Do they take a product and read at the pack what does it contain? That's one problem.
Yeah.
2 is the issue of the language, because for a lay person kunzima to understand ukuthi yini lebhaliwe la.
Yes, all these ingredients.
So some people say, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, so babheka nje date kuphela and then bathenga.
Here's one viewer who says that they bought milk which was labeled to be fat-free.
Yeah.
But when they looked at the bag, it was written fat, 2% of fat.
Sure.
And they want to know if that's misleading as well.
Look, endaweni eningi if you say it's fat-free, kufanele kungenani be less than 3 or 5%.
Okay.
So if it's about 2%,
Is it fine?
it really doesn't make much of a difference. I mean, if you see a shop most of the time, if you're looking for something that is 100% fat-free, chances are that you won't get it, but you'll get 2% or whatever the case may be. So if it's less than 3-5%, I'll be a bit comfortable.
You'll be a bit, okay. Yeah. Let's go to Dr. Steinman in Cape Town again. Dr. Steinman, since you were following these judgments, and last week there was a ruling that one of the weight loss solutions you were following over the years had to be removed on the shelves and on the market. What do you say then? Because there are consumers who would say that the product has worked for them and still continues to work. How do you prove that a product is, the claims are unsubstantiated and unfounded?
Right, the burden of proof from therapeutic products is that the product has to prove that it works, as opposed to the argument that you have to prove that it doesn't work. Now, we do know from clinical studies and from research spanning over many years that there are a number of reasons why products appear to work when, in fact, there's no valid reason for it. And some
So
of it
on
is,
that
for
point,
example,
what's a valid reason to you, doctor, when you talk about the valid reason? What's a valid reason? If I bought the weight loss solution, used it, consumed it, and I seem to have shed a couple of pounds, how do you then go about saying that those claims are unsubstantiated?
No, the claims are not unsubstantiated for a person. It is the claim that it will be for the average consumer beneficial. In other words, you are making the claim that this product works for the majority of consumers using it. And as Tommy pointed out earlier, the consumer needs to have informed right of choice. He needs to know that the risk or the chance of this product working is only 1% or 10% or 20%, or as most advertisements make the claim that it works for everyone. Mm-hmm. And the burden of proof is to confirm that this product does work for the average consumer and not an exceptional case where there might be other factors that have influenced that person losing weight. For example, we know from studies that people taking placebos, in other words, products with no active ingredients, can lose weight.
All right. Do you think the judgment was fair to the consumer, though, to the average consumer? I mean, this product, was there enough recourse? These people made a lot of money by selling these to vulnerable consumers. And, I mean, the shelves were going like cakes. The products were going like cakes on the shelves. But do you think this is enough recourse for the consumer?
Ideally, in the South African context, the MCC should have taken action against this company years ago, but the MCC, the Medicines Control Council, has not had an effective policing policy. We've also got the National Consumer Commission, which has not been able to react fast enough against companies like this because they are overloaded with complaints, and so there's no recourse. And so it leaves us consumer activists or ordinary consumers only really with the Advertising Standards Authority to have some impact. It means the average consumer who did not benefit from this product has no recourse. If he goes back to Pick n Pay or to any of the shops and he says he wants his money back, he's not going to get his money back. And we have unfortunately got consumers in South Africa who generally are very pliant. In other words, they take a product, it doesn't work, they don't go back and complain, and often in my experience, they tend to think that they're at fault. They think that the product must work because it was on television or in a magazine. And the fact that it doesn't work is not because the product's not working, but because they are defective. And they just give up and they don't try and go for a recourse or getting their money back.
But then what I was going to say that I believe that you were appealing basically for the second time. How different was this process for appealing as compared to the previous one?
Well, in this case, I did not appeal the ruling. The ruling went in my favor and the Herbex appealed the ruling saying
after you made the claims.
The ASA was wrong.
Okay.
Well, I put in a complaint and I said that firstly, the doctor who said the product works, who substantiated, hasn't qualified in the area that he claims to have expertise. And I said, secondly, there is no proof that the ingredients or the combination of it was effective. The ASA ruled in my favor, and Herbex appealed that ruling, lost at the ASC level, which is the Appeal Standards Committee level, and then appealed it up to the final appeal committee, which was chaired by Judge O'Regan. So it was basically Herbex saying that the ASA's first ruling was incorrect.
So it was incorrect, the first ruling. So they had to appeal and then they still didn't get victory on the second one?
That's right. In other words, they said the ASA was wrong in going against the experts, but the ASA looked at my arguments and they confirmed that my arguments were sound. I basically took Herbex's argument and I said, look, the expert says that this ingredient works, but if you read the literature that they've supplied you, it says it doesn't work. Plus the dosage that the literature says needs to be 3,000 milligrams, for example, whereas they're using less than 100 milligrams. So my argument was that their own evidence was contradictory to what the expert was claiming.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Steinman. We'll come back to you. Let's just quickly take another ad break, and after this ad break, we'll continue with our discussion. Remember that you can call us on 011-714-6918 or 6919. Send us your messages on Facebook and on Twitter. After this break, we'll be back. Well, welcome back in our discussion. We still continue this talk about false advertisements that are currently flooding the market and how vulnerable you've been as the consumer. Before the break, I was speaking to Dr. Steinman, who's in Cape Town, and was telling us basically about a weight loss solution that is currently on the market, or that many of you could be using right there at home, and how it was ruled as keeping up or not delivering as up to its promises. Let's take some of the messages that you've sent us on Twitter, Facebook rather, who says, we've got Selo Gift Rampela, who says, I was once misled by an advertisement on ShopRite. You save prices on the pamphlet were not similar to the price right inside the store. So how can you tackle this matter? Because it's increasing every day. And then we've got Princess Zizipiwe, who says, other shops show people lower price, and when you pay there, you'll find that you have paid more money than they put on the advert. And then Khamir says, I joined to sell Forever Living products, and I stopped because I felt like I was lying to my customers when I kept on telling them it works, while I have never really seen people who actually use the product. I feel like I was lying to make money. Now, this is very popular, Butami, where people go to these shops, especially the retail stores and the supermarkets. They say, according to the advertisement on the pamphlet, this was stated, and when you get to the store, it's totally different. You know, why is this still continuing if then consumers are aware, or you have organizations like yours which deal with amalungelo abathengi?
Yeah, there are two things, right? Sometimes you get that advert, and it says, price, it's so much. But between these 2 days, maybe weekend only. So if you have on a Monday, the price might have changed. So it's important to check out those things, which are the dates which are valid for those prices. And again, in a shop, the most important thing, check which lapama prices, on a product. The price some of the time, you tell what the price it's different. And when you need to question that, and then we challenge so that a price kuma shelves. And then if they price, then you don't buy the product. But the biggest problem they don't rate these things. Uthola ukuthi umuntu makushawa lapha emshinini akabheka ukuthi labantu bafaka yiphi ilent ama prices angasifundi neslip, and uthola ukuthi as a result bagcina sebekhokhe ke imali eningi. It's therefore very important ukuthi ama consumers the information fanele bayibheke ngaso sonke isikhathi.
All right, let's come to you, Dr. Steinman in Cape Town. Now that you are rounding up our discussion, and as one who is, as you prefer that to call you, a serial complainant, what would you say, or how would you advise other consumers who are out there and who still continue being duped by these advertisements? How would they go about following the procedure or the process that you followed in appealing against this product?
I'd like to put that into context. The Minister of Health mentioned in Parliament about 2 years ago that there's 155,000 unregistered therapeutic products on the market. And in other words, they've never been assessed for safety, efficacy meaning whether they work or not. And so there's this risk to consumers that they are constantly buying products with no proof of efficacy.
All right. So what can consumers do? Sorry, just to break it there. What can consumers do in order to appeal against these products?
I think the first thing is that they can write to the Medicines Control Council, but they are very unlikely to get action, but at least that is the right thing to do. The second process is to then write to the ASA, who can have an impact on the advertising and the claims that that product is making. And at least they therefore can help other consumers from being duped from that product's claims.
All right, thank you.
And then the third option is to go for the National Consumer Commission.
All right, National Consumer Commission. Let's just take Mambulane, who's calling us from Mpumalanga. Mambulane, hello and welcome to the show.
Yeah, Mangani.
Sikhona kunjani sis?
Mina ngicela ukubuza baba divorce ngingazo igama lesitolo ngisempumalanga eGrill. Ngicela ukubuza like divorce ne uthola bathi iburevorce but mau i-taster I see Purevors and in the stew beef, Mautenga. The stew beef lesi uthola kunenya is esinye sinamafuta yellow, esinye sinamafuta white.
Amafuta yellow.
Esinye uthola ile nyama angisho bathi stew beef.
All right.
Uthola le nyama I old indala, le enye I fresh mara same especially special fresh stewing beef. So ngikholelanga kanani ukuthi yisi special set beef ngoba ayifani le nyama.
Okay, Mambulane.
I taste like Purevor.
Okay, Mambulane, still ubukele apho ku TV yakho. Just quickly going to answer that question, Putami. I believe that not so long ago you dealt with meat scandal. During the meat scandal, you dealt with that case.
Yeah.
Mambulane sitting nyama akusiyo la ithengile. So what happens?
No, it was about 2 years ago, I think. University of Stellenbosch tested some meat products. And kwatholakala ukuthi in these meat products wakhona yonke into, you know, and lento engadisclose ukubathenga ukuthi kulama meat products esiwathenga ikakhulukazi ama-bakers.
So in that case, what do they do? What do they do? Do they go complain to the butchery?
Well, look, the doctor in Cape Town mentioned something very interesting. The National Consumer Commission is overloaded with consumer complaints. That shouldn't be the case. The National Consumer Commission, should be focusing on much more serious issues like investigations, rather than dealing with individual consumer complaints. Consumer complaints should be referred to advice offices in the different parts of the country, and then let the Consumer Commission deal with serious issues.
Serious issues.
You know, so if that was happening, then we'll be able to deal with most of these problems.
Okay.
Now, in this particular case, Senyama, the problem is that we don't have standards.
Okay. Don't have standards. Dr. Steinman, let's come to you in Cape Town. Just 2 words. What would you say to the consumers who are watching right now and who are thinking of appealing against some products that have been seen misleading? Just 2 words, shortly.
Complain to the ASA, make your case very strong.
Complain to the SAA and make your case very strong.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Steinman. That was Dr. Steinman who was joining us in our Cape Town studios in Sea Point. And in studio right here in Johannesburg, we had Mr. Tabi Bolane, who was also giving us some information when it comes to these misleading advertisements. Well, let me take my time and thank the studio guests, as I thank them, and also the crew for putting together this great production. It repeats that to every Monday at 12. From me, Sipio Ganza, will be the rest of the team. Yilungelo Lakho. Have a good time.